everybody. Welcome to the LandCast. I'm Brandon Chasteen, the CEO of Chasteen Land and Title, and I am here with my brother, Jeremy Chasteen. How's it going, Jeremy?
Pretty good. Doing all right.
Awesome. And today we're also joined by Bert Ferrara. Bert, tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, who you work with.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thanks for having me on. Pleasure to join you. I'm the President and Chief Executive Officer of Revitalize Resources, headquartered in Evansville, Indiana. We've been operating in the Illinois Basin for almost 4 years. In August, our business strategy is really on the acquisition and optimization of mature conventional properties here in the Illinois Basin. My background is an attorney, graduated from Yale University with an economics degree and from the University of Oklahoma College of Law. I was an investment banker for a handful of years with Morgan Stanley in Houston during the financial crisis, and then opted to get my law degree and was a landman for a period of time with Concho. Spent a couple weeks in the Eddy County Courthouse. After 2 weeks, they figured that was enough for me, I guess. But I was a landman for 6 months there, and then ultimately was in-house counsel at Legacy Reserves in Midland. Became the general counsel after 5 years there, and part of the management team, the executive team, and after the bankruptcy, I was there for a year and got the idea to start Revitalize.
Yeah, so intrigued. You said Yale, right? Is that where you did your undergrad?
I did. It was.
And
yeah, I was a football player, so I'm not as smart as most of the folks that went to school there, but very thankful my athletic career was able to turn into something pretty tangible at the end and opens a lot of doors.
Yeah, that's
what
awesome.
position did you play?
I was a defensive back. That was about 50 pounds ago. And, but yeah, I was a free safety in a corner. But now the younger guys ask, are you a linebacker or an offensive guard? And I was like, oh man, I got to back off on the food, I guess, if people are asking me if I was a linebacker back in the day.
You went to Yale, and then did you just know that you would be going into the land industry after that, or did you find your way stumbling into it?
No, I was an investment banker. Yeah, I was an investment banker at Morgan Stanley. And so, in the investment banking world, they give you industry choices, and, they'd say, give us your top four. And oil was my fourth. And I was one of the younger ones in the class. So naturally, I didn't get my first choice. I got oil and gas, but ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me. Made a career out of it, but, kind of just happened out of accident. Mm-hmm. And it's what a lot of Ivy League football players did back in the day, was go on Wall Street. And so, yeah, I was, just one of those things, very much by accident, not by design. I was an economics major, not a technical person, but just made a career of it.
How long were you with in investment banking?
I was there 3 years, so I graduated in 2007, thankfully, what a difference a year makes. 2008 was a much different year.
Because that was the crash, right? 2008? Yep.
It was the crash, yeah. So I got my job offer in 2006. The kids that graduated the next year were fine, but, the following year is really when the business changed. And, no stranger to booms and busts, yep. Right? Yep. And, I liked the industry, had a real passion for the industry, but I saw the world changing with investment banking and, decided to go get my law degree. And so was kind of looking at different places and, fell in love with Norman.
Yep.
Strangely enough, I was working on the Chesapeake Midstream Partners IPO that year, so spent a lot of time in Oklahoma,
yep.
Both visiting school as well as on that IPO, and was actually kind of cool. I was a 1L and got to go to the closing dinner at the, I think it was at the ranch in Northwest Oklahoma City, so a day out of the dining hall was nice, my first year of law school.
Yeah. And I'm guessing in law school, you focused on oil and gas. Was that your focus?
Oil and gas, and then, kind of the corporate securities finance, okay. Kind of the, I'd always wanted to kind of start something like Revitalize. So, took the dirt classes, oil and gas. I mean, at the time, Oklahoma was second to none in terms of the mineral law program.
Yep.
Yeah. Professor Owen Anderson, was, an incredible mentor, great teacher, a guy, I call today, and he'll have an encyclopedic knowledge of some case in Illinois from the 20s. I'm like, good night. This is incredible. But yeah, kind of balance both of those, and obviously you got to take your bar classes, yep. But this was always part of the goal, if you will. Yep. But, got an incredible opportunity at Legacy and to be a publicly traded general counsel at 34 was, you don't say no to that.
Yeah.
And, I thought this side was just going to be gone. But, again, booms and busts and things happen. And 37, 38, whatever it was, I figure out what to do for the rest of my life. And here we are in Evansville.
Yeah. So you were at Legacy. What years would that have been?
14 to the end of 20.
Okay.
So, I saw it all. I mean, it was a pretty cool ride. We did a bunch of really neat stuff, innovative, pretty cutting edge on the corporate side. I mean, from proxy contest to obviously the bankruptcy filing, out of court restructuring, structured finance. We did one of the first drill cos, learned a lot about the, financial side and got, exposure to some more kind of the arcane capital market stuff. But yeah, great experience, obviously very rewarding professionally and personally, and, gave me the ability, the skill set and the ability to start Revitalize.
Yeah. You mentioned that you were a landman for about 6 months. Was that with Legacy or was that before?
No, that was at Concho.
Okay, that was at Concho.
Okay.
Yeah. At what years were that?
That would have been 13 to 14. Yeah, when I graduated. Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
June.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, like a great thing. Like I was in the land admin department, and so had a knowledge of the databases, and I think I was a couple months or a couple weeks into my DO division order tour of duty when the Legacy opportunity came, and it served me well. And it might have been frustrating that, you're an attorney, you're doing this land admin, but it gave me an appreciation of part of the oil company that, when I was at Legacy, I was associate general counsel, and they'd be talking about land systems or something. I'd make a comment. My boss would look at me. He's like, "How in the world do you know this?" And I was like, "I used to do this for, 4 months or 5 months, whatever it was." And I think that's the thing. Like when you start something like this, you got to know a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. You see the stuff in the field, but there's a lot of back office corporate kind of things that also, are just as integral to getting a company up off the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said that was in Eddy County. Is that where that was?
Well, when I was an intern, they wanted us to get some field experience. And so, they'd send us out, and it was back when Concho was, very active on the shelf, Northwest Shelf there. So yeah, it was in Carlsbad for a couple of weeks, and I loved it. I mean, it's history, it's reading history, and they gave us a quarter section or whatever. And, but yeah, they called me back to the office after. I don't know if that was a aptitude thing or
do something else. Yeah.
But I enjoyed it. Yeah. I mean, that was a good piece. The folks at Concho there got you a broad, background in, land admin, the field. So you just kind of appreciated all of what went into being a landman or, having a land department.
So, now you're here in Evansville with, Revitalize. So just, I'm just curious as to how that started, what your process was, what it looks like, what your company looks like right now.
Great question. I think it's something that like people outside this industry hear the story and like, how does this come to be? But like, there's a true wildcatting spirit in this industry to take the leap and go off on your own and go to a place that you have no connection. I have no connection in this area beyond Revitalize and, now my Indiana driver's license. When I left Legacy at the end of 2020, it was a time of consolidation in the industry. The country was questioning its need for fossil fuels into the future. And so it was a hard time to find a job as a young but senior level attorney. And so I was out of work for 18 months. And at one point, after about 12 months, I was just like, I need to get back at it. And I was like, screw it. I'm going to start my own thing. I'm tired of being told no. And I had met someone at NAPE. I was living in Houston. I moved back to Houston at the time. That talked about the Illinois Basin. I was like, I had no idea this place. Like, what is this? And, at the time, a previous relationship had a home outside of Chicago. One week I was, kind of sitting around, nothing to do. I was like, I'm just going to go to Evansville. And I looked the guy up that I saw at NAPE and just bombarded LinkedIn with messages and, got a second meeting. And so those two meetings, that was December of 2021. ate at the Gerst House, was my first meal in Evansville, and just had those 2 meetings. And I remember thinking like, man, I don't know if I can make something work here, but just finally just kind of shoe leathered the basin and met people. And, 2 meetings turned into 4, turned into 8. Met a guy by the name of Brian Dykus through LinkedIn. He had his cell phone on his LinkedIn profile, and he called me coming off a rig, and I'm sitting on my couch in Houston, and he's like, come meet me next time you're up here. And I was like, all right. So I did. And he introduced me to Jim Rohde, who was the, principal of Core Minerals. And, that was our first acquisition here was buying Core. And, at that point I had to put a team together. We financed it, the couple of us. And so we were off and running and just, with a vision and, someone needed to operate mature properties. Legacy was the last was the last MLP to go bankrupt. And there's a bunch of old properties. Someone had to manage them and operate them. And so, we saw a need for, a private distribution cash flow vehicle. And, that's kind of how we got started. And that's, another thing here. We have 5 employees. We're triple the size of where we were. We've proven the portfolio. We've really invested in, technology needed to operate.
No,
anyway,
this is
I'm
great.
rambling here at the end, but we changed our stripes, and I think like a lot of people come into these older basins and they're like, oh, you could redo this, redo that, find this formation, find that formation. It's like the old guys knew what they were doing. A lot of the logging technology was started here. The majors were good at what they did, and so we found that we can operate better. We could just be more thoughtful in lowering LOE and extending economic life and come up with a pretty damn good oil company.
Yeah, that you said you guys have a pretty clear vision of what you're doing, right? I think a lot of young people who are trying to figure out what they want to do, they don't realize that, they want to go and they start a business, but you do kind of need that direction and then idea of what you want to do and the right people in the right place. Similar thing to us, like we back in 2013 now, Jeremy? 2012. We were getting kind of tired of the ups and downs of being a contract landman, right? And so we decided to go ahead and try to start our own thing, and it's taken off, and we've had ups and downs and learned some hard lessons. But I think that especially knowing where you want to go, who you want to be, and the people you want to do it with, that's pretty important.
Yeah, and I think not being afraid to change course.
Yep.
And like for us, we've started water floods. We've done some development, but, in terms of building a business and creating long-term value, our ability to lower LOE and make smarter operational decisions is what's driven Revitalize to being what it is. And, there's this coffee shop talk that Revitalize doesn't drill or Revitalize doesn't do this. It's like Revitalize makes money. Yep. And fundamentally, this business about generating return to equity holders, and we harp on that consistently, is that if the E&P investor does not make money, none of this is around. The service guys, land guys, the governments, none of it. Royalty owners, if the E&P investor is not generating return, you might as well all go home.
Yeah.
Having that vision, that direction, but also a willingness to kind of adapt and change course. You have any stories or anything there for people who might be listening, like about when that was helpful for you?
I think, so like this Maha acquisition that we did that tripled our size. It's this newer, deeper Mississippian drilling that's been done here in the Illinois Basin. And when we first got up here, it's relatively high decline. It kind of didn't fit our model of like a lower, corporate decline asset. But what we found is there was a lot of value in the production. We don't, we think the drilling economics are challenged at any reasonable commodity price, but there's PDP value and there's ability to find more oil by lowering LOE and extending economic life. And magnitudes of, expenditures that are $100,000 can find, the amount of oil that $1 million well can do. And so again, it's about, at first we never would have touched that stuff, but after a while we're like, is there ability to generate return? And so we looked at it again and, frankly, we love that asset. We take as much of it as we can. We do the deal, again. And even with, even at lower oil prices, I mean, we bought it, oil was $60.
I was just wondering if you would mind telling people what LOE means, because you keep.
Oh yeah, lease operating expense. Yep. Sorry about that.
I'm just imagining some people might listen and be like, "What does that mean? What does that mean?"
It's to operate a lease. Yeah.
There's a lot of jargon in our.
Yeah, operating expense. I mean, it's your chemical, it's your electricity, it's your labor. I think most importantly, it's your repairs, and that's really where this is a stripper well world. It's all about uptime. If you're pulling a rig, if you're pulling a well, it's the cost of that rig and the operation, but it's also the foregone revenue.
Yeah. What y'all own currently, is it mostly in Indiana, or do y'all have some in Illinois as well?
Yeah, we're in all three states. We're kind of in the anomaly, like, I guess, depending on how you count it, call it 85% of the companies in Indiana, 10% in Kentucky, and then about 5% in Illinois, which is the complete backwards of what you would think. But yeah, we could, a good golf shot, you could probably hit Illinois from a lot of our stuff.
Absolutely.
In Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to that point about being adaptable and learning from change and stuff too, like on our end, we got into this largely because of the crash that happened with oil back in the early 2010s.
What was it?
And so, we were trying, it would be mid 2000s. And so we had already kind of started this, and then things crashed. And so we had to adapt and change. And some of the things we tried, we didn't stay with. Like we did some residential title and stuff like that. We don't do a lot of that anymore. But one of the things that I've noticed with some landmen is they just want to wait for the next big play, right? And they're not trying to go out and to be adaptable and to get to there. They can be kind of fearful of new industries, branching into new directions with this. So anyways, I think it's great to hear that that's worked for you, not sitting around and just waiting, but being proactive, taking the initiative to go out and do things like that. It's worked for us. Not all of it's worked.
Yeah. Well, and I think, like you said, like these things are born out of hardship. You don't leave something, you're not in some cush position and decide to go out on your own. You need a little, you need a catalyst, or you need some sort of discomfort.
Yeah,
so it's great to hear.
I mean, I think the year that we started our company, it may have been the next year, but I remember, so we grew up in Texas. Brandon started out in the Barnett Shell in Fort Worth. And then I moved over to West Texas for a while, did some stuff out there, ultimately moved up to Ohio. But, we were working on a coal project together in Illinois, and the contract ended. That's when we started our company. The very next year, we were back in Texas, and I remember just every now and then looking at oil price, and it was like 120, then it was 110, then it was 100, and it just kept going down. And by the time we got back to Indiana, it was down like in $30 a barrel or something like that. It was insane. And Brandon and I both had only ever been in the energy industry, and we had to figure out, because unfortunately for us, when oil prices are not good, we're actually some of the first people that go. No, they don't want to go get new leases. They, maybe they have some, title to throw your way, but so we had to adapt and learn, that there is other industries that we can be a part of. I mean, lately, I think every single landman has been doing solar. That's been huge. All over the place. Yeah,
it seems like up here is solar and wind. The land guys I talk to.
That's what they've been doing.
When they make you go all the way back, I mean, they need some pretty stout.
Yeah, they do.
Workers.
Very similar to oil and gas.
Yeah,
they need.
Yeah, they want patent to present type searches. So has oil prices been being up? Has that helped you guys quite a bit, or is it?
Yes, we're always planning through the cycle, and this too shall pass, and the seeds of every bust are in every boom, and vice versa. And so we've done this long enough to know that this isn't forever. We'll harvest the bounty, but you can already see demand destruction. Through Europe and Asia, and even in the U.S. And so, we're being prudent about capital expenditure. We still run the business as if, we see a lower, longer term price, but we never want to be ungrateful. We take the bounty, and the owners appreciate it. You're speaking of the main one. And because I remember last year at this time, price in the 50s. We were trying to scale the business. It was a hard time finding a transaction here. And we were really questioning, could we grow to what we wanted to in the Illinois Basin? And, now obviously with the Maha deal, a lot of momentum, and prices are, definitely helping. But we don't go chasing stuff that we wouldn't, that doesn't make sense, into the 50s.
Well, just listening to you though, it's very clear that, that you kind of have had you've had a awesome life that has led up to this, in that, you were an investment banker, and then you have your law degree, and now you're in oil and gas. Because it's just clear from talking to you that you're very conscientious of the financial side of what you're doing, which, I don't think every single company has that kind of person leading them.
Yeah, and I made this point at the IOGA, Illinois Oil and Gas Association panel, was, take the three of the big Permian sales, and take Concho, take Endeavor, and take Conquest. All three of those guys were led by engineers that started very early in their career at a bank. And fundamentally, valuation is key to creating value in this business. And I'm not a petroleum engineer, don't pretend to be. But, the first guy I brought into this was a reservoir engineer. And I knew that was very important. And so if you overbuy, doesn't matter how good you are in the field, you're not going to make any money. And we're very conscientious of that. Some of the best things we've done as a company are the deals we didn't do. We were patient. It really was 3 years for us to do a sizable deal. And we passed on a lot of things, and we're grateful for it. But the financial side if you buy a bucket of crap and you optimize it, you got an optimized bucket of crap.
Absolutely.
And if you overpay, there's just, this is stripper well world. Like there's, you're whatever sports analogy of multiple touchdowns or runs, and you're in the fourth quarter or the seventh inning, like whatever it is. But it's very important what we do, and we're in the business to make money for our owners. And if we make money for our owners, the royalty owners do well, the service companies do well, the taxing authorities do well. And so we do maintain that discipline. And that's our first business strategy at Revitalize is, acquiring at reasonable economic valuations.
You also said that you guys make use of technology and try to do that sort of thing. You want to elaborate on that at all?
Yeah, no, for sure. So, automation in the oil field's nothing new. I think invention or technology in oil and gas is very little of like new stuff out of whole cloth. It's new applications of existing things. And there's a bunch of, products in the market that, make sense at stripper well margins. And, we've put together a cocktail, that works for us. But, the natural question is like, well, if it's all in the market, what makes you guys different? And, one, I think you've got to make management decisions to cut expense out of the system by using this technology. If you just add expense, you've just added expense. You've got to find the savings to justify deploying this technology. And then second, you need a management culture committed to making it work. And, we get a lot of pushback from, other folks that this doesn't work. So-and-so used it, doesn't work. It's like, well, so-and-so didn't want it to work. There's going to be problems. And it's a question of whether you're committed to helping fix those problems and whether it's how you monitor it. We've been a part of engineering solutions for vendors. We're committed to making it work. And if you want to get fired at Revitalize, the quickest way is push back against this technology. You'll be out the next day. And, I bought into it. Our pumpers have bought into it, and everyone in between. And it's helped us deliver, best in class.
And one of the things that you probably have experienced, that we've experienced, is being in the Illinois Basin in particular, right? It leads to its own sort of challenges because it's not one of the biggest plays, right? And so trying to get into that play itself can lead to challenges and strategies that I think really help sharpen and strengthen you as a company. At least it has for us. And so, I guess what's in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about maybe some young men or women out who are listening to the podcast, and they're trying to either get into this industry or they want to start a business. And so, like, what are some of the essential business things or lessons that you've learned that you would want to share with them? I like what you said about hardships. That's kind of been going in the back of my mind, is how hardship kind of drives innovation, drives you to be better as a company. So I don't know if you have any of those things you'd want to share.
I think having a team that has all the necessary skill sets and being properly staffed when you're getting into the business, I think it'll reduce the amount of expense you incur by messing up. I saw a company here that kind of came and went just because they didn't have the technical ability. But one guy was trying to do it all. He knew one side of the business, but he didn't know all the rest of it. And I think that's the beauty of Revitalize, is like, at a very young age, we made the right personnel decisions. Like, we've got a team, from the corporate in the commercial side with me, the technical side with Trey, in the field with Dustin. We have a team that covers all the bases. And, we operate a pretty big company, pretty lean. We have a portfolio that goes from Wayne County, Illinois, Spencer County, Indiana, Webster County, Kentucky. We have 2 pumpers.
Wow.
And Odin up by where y'all are. And we do that with 2 company pumpers. And we could add something. We could add a deal. I mean, we couldn't add another Maha, but like, we could add another field or 2 and not people get their weekends. It's work for us. But I think that's the big thing, is just, staff yourself appropriately. There's all sorts of things that come up.
So that team matters, and that I've heard someone describe it as, you can't undervalue the value of A players versus B players on your team. And so trying to make those connections and is really important.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm an Oklahoma Sooner too. And Barry Switzer, someone said he didn't have all the answers. He just had most of the players. And, if I'm sure folks in Texas understood that very, very well. And great personality. I think I saw him on TV at one point, and he was campaigning for Governor Perry at one point. And I said, Coach Switzer, what are you doing down here? He said, I've taken so many good things out of this state. I thought I'd give something back. But I mean, he got the personal side, and as much success as Coach Switzer had at Oklahoma, he had the humility to say, like, I needed good people. And if you got good people, if my guy's going to get to that pylon faster than your guy, we're probably going to win. And I think, that's another thing. We've brought talent from outside the basin, that just have looked at things.
So Signetti here at IU, he has a very similar outlook on his team, where he has quotes where he says, what matters the most is not like him as a coach. It's the coaches that he has on his staff. Right. And it's not that you're not looking for the 5-star recruit necessarily. You're looking for the 3 or 4 that you really see talent and potential with. And those are the things that matter. And so.
Yeah, no, it's incredible what he's done up there. And, I tease the folks, back in Houston, Midland, that, this is a football state. And hopefully before too long, it's an oil state too.
That's funny. So when you, so you're not from the Midwest, similar to us. We grew up in Texas. We really only ended up here in Bloomington, Indiana, because my brother went to IU for his doctorate. And when we started our business, one of the things that was difficult, really difficult, and part of it was because we were energy guys. We've never done anything outside of oil, gas, and coal, was actually breaking into the industry.
So when we got started, getting people like service companies to call us was tough. Yep. And I said, like, we're going to pay at no more than 30 days. Like 30 days, we're going to pay. And then that's going to show people that, like, hey, we're serious. Because that way we're just like, look, these guys pay their bills. That's how we built that credibility. I spent a lot of time here in Evansville. When the business first started, I was commuting up to Chicago on the weekends. I've since relocated full time here. I was just present. I would go meet people in wherever, Carmi or Mount Carmel or Mount Vernon. I just tried to, get that local flavor.
I also think that you can't underplay the value of a reputation. And so we've had an easier time in the more recent years because people know who we are now, right? And they've seen our work and they know what we do. And I do think reputation is a strong motivator on both sides. And it's a great thing to try and protect as far as a company goes too, is that reputation. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and no substitute for great work. Like, our lender on the Maha deal was hooting and hollering about y'all's mineral tenant reports, and and they had never heard of you guys, and that's changed. And just the same way as we shocked a lot of people by being the ones that bought Maha, and we heard that from a number of people, and got exposure to some new vendors, and they see how we look at a field and how we've created value, and it's gotten people's eyes woken up, or opened up to what we can do as a company.
So,
it was always apparent to us. It just wasn't apparent to everybody else. So.
Yep. That's how it felt for us too. We were just like, come on, guys, just give us a try.
I mean, we would actually drive
and actually the first
companies and go up into their offices. And it was,
like Brandon said, it ultimately worked. I mean, what you need to get that first deal, knock it out of the park, make sure that person's happy, and the word will eventually get out there that, hey, these guys from Texas, they're here to stay, and they're not a threat to anybody. They're here to help, and they want to do quality work, and they want to provide quality service to the industry. And I feel like we've gotten that now. Part of it is, we've been here now for 14 years. This year, I think it's 14.
My son loves football, and for a while thought about getting into football, wanting to play. I don't think it's going to work out for him. He hurt his ACL. But I was just curious, are there anything, so if he ever listens, he would hate if I didn't ask this. Are there any things that you took from the football field into the business world? Are there things that have translated for you?
It takes big guys, it takes fast guys, it takes guys who can kick, it takes guys who can throw, and it's all different people. And all companies the same way. It takes engineers, it takes ops guys, it takes accountants, it takes, and they're not all the same people, and they're all doing something. And I think that's one thing, like football, more than any, I mean, it's the ultimate team game. And, when the national championship or the Super Bowl's on the line, you got the little guy with the big long last name, that the game's out on his instep. There's the star running back, the star quarterback, doesn't really matter at that point. That guy's the most important guy on the field. And I think that's something from football to take to oil and gas. Sacrifice. I mean, just kind of the general life lessons, obviously, honing your craft and sacrifice that, success is developed, when no one's watching, was a thing. And, pick yourself up. There's good days and bad. Some days you get out of bed and you can already tell based on the emails in your phone that I can't wait to get back in bed tonight, and then there's other days that, you're just, everything you touch turns to gold and you don't want to go to bed at night. And, but those, you got to take the good and the bad. And so I think that's
great. Yeah.
A couple of the things I
mean,
would take.
When you get to a certain point in your career, you look back and you realize how valuable all the lessons were that you learned through other things that you weren't even expecting to necessarily be here today, right? In Evansville, but here you are, and all the things that happened in your life that got you here. And so that's great. Well, I think that we can pretty much be done unless I'd like to give you the opportunity to say anything that you might want to about Revitalize, or if there anything you'd feel like we haven't touched on that you want to touch on.
This is one industry that is very entrepreneurial, that does embody that American spirit of a new frontier, a new place, that you take the knowledge, that we developed in, Houston and Midland, and, brought it here and believed in ourselves and bet on ourselves. And, I think different than a lot of kind of manufacturing businesses, like you're able to, individuals without a big private equity institutional sponsor can start a company and generate success. And I think that's something that's, and create real jobs, create careers. And we're proud of the opportunities that, that we've provided and have been provided to us. And I think it's also good that we look at ourselves as ambassadors of the industry in a place that doesn't necessarily appreciate everything that American oil and gas does. Having lived in Houston Midland, it was a given, the benefits of oil and gas. But when I lived outside of Chicago, I'd be asked, like, isn't this a dying industry? Why are you doing this? Like, and, it'd be fun to go down like on a person and be like all the things that are made out of oil and gas, from the sunglasses and the clothes, and, or you're in a fire pit or, with propane heaters, and you're like, guys, like, you guys are the biggest consumers here. And, we provide that. And, Landman's been the show has been a great entertainment. But it's made people really realize in places of the country that love to consume it, but never thought about producing it.
Yeah, that's
great. Yeah. And we've seen the same thing and are really glad to be a part of this industry.
Yeah. No, I always, it's an industry that dominates the communities in which it operates. And, they name football teams after it, and, real estate development somehow doesn't get the same, like, I haven't seen a football team.
It'll always be the Houston Oilers to me.
Shots fired with changing the colors down there in Nashville. But that's always fun to go down there.
That's right.
And when the Texans come
out. So people can find you at revitalizeresources.com. Looks like you're on LinkedIn. They have a way to get in touch with you there. So
absolutely. Yeah, chat with anybody. We'd love to.
Yeah, appreciate you being on.
Appreciate
Thanks.
you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
See everybody next time.
The LandCast is a production of Chasteen Land and Title. For uncompromising accuracy and land work across oil and gas, commercial, telecom, energy, and more, check us out at chasteenland.com. If you enjoyed this conversation, please leave us a review and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And join us each week as we keep telling the stories of the land industry.